Welcome to Mediumship Moments with psychic medium Kim Durham. Join her as she shares her personal journey with mediumship, connects with your loved ones, and discusses topics dealing with spirituality.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mediumship Moments. I'm your host, Kim Durham, second-gen psychic medium. And today I have a difficult topic to talk about. And I say that we're going to talk about grief. Specifically, the first holiday without a loved one. And I'm going to have my mini-me.
Hey again.
Yep, she's back. Sit here and talk about that because it's something we're experiencing, and everyone who has a parent will experience some point in their life. It's a thought. The loss of a parent is a journey. No one knows what it's like until you take it. You can read books on it. Your friends can share about it. But until you actually sit in that grief and in that loss, you have no idea. So let's talk about what grief is. Grief is a natural reaction to losing someone, right? Or something or someone dear. Someone dear. The pain of that initial grief is just, it's just all consuming. For me personally, when I lost my mom, it was just, I wailed. I just wailed. The sounds that came out of my body when I was told, just an unbelievable loss, losing a parent. I have not walked the journey of losing a child. I have worked and been blessed to work with parents who have. That I've been told is just it pulls the life and the oxygen out of your lungs. It's the best way I can tell you that. It's a whirlwind of these emotions. You go through shock, anger, disbelief, guilt, and deep sadness. And all of these feelings come at different points. Now, I'll talk about Kubler-Ross, Dr. Kubler-Ross, who was a nurse who went on and studied with Dr. Moody near-death experiences. And she really classified the 5 stages of grief over what that was like. And when you have that type of grief hit you and you're in the thick of it, shall I say?
Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance.
Thank you, Bree.
Yeah.
It's that the first stage is
denial.
Is denial. It's that shock. Really, it's the shock, that the disbelief. I can't believe this person is no longer here. I just talked to them 2 hours ago. In my case, I had spoken to my mom an hour prior, maybe an hour and a half. And how could they not be here? Is the brain trying to understand what the body is already feeling? It's like disconnect. For me, it was anyway. Yeah. Over that. And so when you walk that path of shock and anger and disbelief and guilt, I could have had guilt that I could have been there and changed the outcome of my mom's crossing, when I know the angels were putting me in another location to make sure I wasn't there. But that deep sadness, this emotional distress can really, really take a toll on your physical well-being. For everything from, not being able to sleep, not being able to eat, or, like I said, think clearly. I can remember when my mom crossed, I really don't know what I did the first week. First 2 weeks, truly. You're just going through the motions, I guess, is the best way, and that's, and that's where your loved ones, your family, your support system comes into play. These responses of not being able to think clearly or eat or sleep, and, they're perfectly, completely normal. But the intensity of your grief often correlates with the significance, right, of a loss. For me, the loss of a mother was significant. The loss of a friend, I'm not trying to gauge what's a bigger loss. I mean, truly, when you have that kind of vacuum happen in your life and have it happen tragically for parents who've lost children, how do you navigate that? How do you do that? And it's a tough topic, but it's one that I think that we need to put light on, especially in light of it being the holidays here, And I talk about this with my clients and with, family members. We're experiencing grief. It's the first holiday without my pop. Him making his sausage stuffing, or at least giving me the recipe once again, because I don't think I've ever written it down. It's got to be somewhere. But he made the best turkey sausage.
He measured with love.
He did, exactly.
There is no recipe. He just measure with love.
He did measure with love. And so I want to go through this about anybody out there listening to my voice, to our voice, that's experiencing loss at the holidays. So the first thing, right, with that empty chair, whether it's your Thanksgiving, Christmas, or any of your holidays, Yom Kippur, how do you get through this? How are you going to navigate the holidays? Well, the first thing, and truly this is important, you have to acknowledge your feelings. Like, you have to acknowledge that you're in grief and that it's okay, that that you don't have to say yes to everything. And I'll share this.
I think that's a very good thing to say, in the sense of when it's the first holiday without a loved one. I know personally for me, avoidance, trying to avoid someone who has passed, that they are past, the denial, really. Right. And then avoiding it by saying yes to everything, because if I say yes to everything, it's going to go away.
Right. The keeping busy phase.
Yes.
People, you have that shock. And then after the shock lifts, and and it varies. This is all based upon
subjective.
Right. It's subjective. So, it could be 2 weeks of that initial shock. For some people, it's 3 months or more. But once that shock lifts, it's let's get busy.
Yeah.
And I've had people in my family share with me that after my dad died, that they went to a holiday party and thought, well, I'll be around friends. It'll help. And truly, it was too soon. And in retrospect, they should have just said no and been okay to say no. And that's the part about acknowledging your feelings, right? It's the part of saying, I just can't do this now. I need to be in my grief. Now, what does that look like, right? So in one's grief, it's taking those moments to acknowledge your feelings and navigating through this wave that will come at you. And so initially, it's a tsunami. It hits you out of nowhere, a rogue wave, a tsunami. You have no idea it was coming for many people, especially with tragedy of unexpected loss. For those that have had loved ones that have had health challenges, even though there is a thought that they may be crossing, until you get to that final point, do you really start to understand those feelings coming through? You may have thought you were prepared, and you're not. So acknowledge your feelings, whether you're feeling, angry, whether you're feeling lonely, acknowledge them and just be in that moment, be in those feelings. You had talked about, Aubrey, saying, learn to say no.
Yeah. After Papa passed, this is my personal experience. I did go to a friend's house because I said I didn't want to be alone, right? I didn't want to be by myself with my feelings. And I remember I went to my friend's house and I had a lovely time, but the whole time, I felt like I shouldn't have been there. And then the next day I ended up having to stay home from work because it all hit me.
Yeah.
And I learned from that experience. I learned to myself, no, Aubrey, you
don't have to make everybody else feel comfortable.
People pleasing. That's the number one thing too, is like we want to people please people because we don't want them to think that something's wrong with us.
Or that we don't want to make everybody so uncomfortable in our grief.
Yes.
And so we end up accommodating others.
Yes.
Because especially women out there, because we're all about making everybody feel better. But then that's what I mean about acknowledging. Like I don't want to be around people right now. Like I just need to sit and be with my feelings, and whether that's your box of Kleenex and your family photos and your memories, and allow those waves to come, the tsunamis, and then the occurring waves after that. The learning to say no, as we said, nope, can't do it. I'm not up for the party, and that it's okay. You don't need an apology. You don't need an excuse. You can say no. And the person that's you're saying no to, have a heart. It's okay. It's if they say no to you, they're being honest with you. They're in their moment and their feelings, and encourage that and say, you know what? Thank you. Like, thank you for saying that. Right. communicating boundaries is a huge one. Now, again, the people pleasing and what do I mean by communicating boundaries? Let's talk about that, right? So let's say, well, every year, especially at the holidays.
Yeah. Traditions.
Right, exactly. And that's where it comes into play where, well, every year we go to Aunt Mary's house because she has Thanksgiving. And you're like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And this year I'm going to have maybe just my kids at my house. And that's what we can do. I can't go to Aunt Mary's house. I'm not up for it. I'm not in that headspace. I'm not in that moment. And it's okay. And I'll just use Aunt Mary's family as an example. Like, don't be calling the bereaved saying, why aren't you here? You should be here. We always do this. You're so important to the family party, the pictures. You guilt them.
And also, grief is not a competition as well. And sometimes with family traditions, people are like, well, he wouldn't want you or they wouldn't want you to do this. And using that as a tool is not healthy. So grief cannot be compared with one another. Just keep that in mind around the holidays, that everybody goes through grief in different stages. And what stage you're in may not be what they're in.
You bring up a good point because I often, I saw this in my own grief with my 3 brothers in that we all were at different places. Like my one brother could crack a joke and he was, and I equate it to anybody who's parents out there, right? We all have kids and kids learn how to walk at different paces, right? Some kids are up at 8 months and you're like, oh my God, they toddled and now they're walking and they look too small to be able to walk. All right. And then they have other kids that are like 14 months anyway, who are in no hurry to walk. Grief is like that. We do it all at our own pace. And so, Brie, you're absolutely right. With that, if they crack a joke, that's okay for them.
Laughter is healing.
Yeah. But in the same token, don't be mad at them because they cracked a joke. They're just in a different spot. It's not disrespectful. Oh my God, I can't believe you said that kind of stuff. It's just they're in a different place of grief and that's okay. And just acknowledge that. There's a really big one here over self-care. When we're grieving and you're in that initial shock and then the transition, I say the transition is usually that 3 to 6 month point where, the initial shock has subsided and now you're in I have to learn how to change the oil in the car because I don't know how to do that. And the date and the doctors, my wife always made my doctor's appointments for me. And I don't know that the part of taking care of yourself, self-care is huge. So keep those dentist appointments, keep the doctor's appointments, and it comes down to, with eating and sleeping, some people can't sleep. Some people will take things to assist them to sleeping, but that really messes with your REM cycle, for the initial shock, maybe. But after that, if you can get on a regular, just, I'm going to bed at 9:30. I don't care. I'm not judging you. I'm going to eat healthy or clean, but I have a saying, there's a saying in my family, starve a cold, feed a griever. So I'm the girl showing up with the baked rigatoni and all the food to care for them because you're not in the right mind to cook or shop or anything else.
I ate an entire pizza by myself.
Did you? Yeah. Did you really?
Yeah. I ordered my favorite pizza.
Okay. Well,
and
starve a cold, feed a griever.
Margarita pizza.
Okay.
That got me through it that day. And honestly, I wouldn't have changed it.
Okay. Well, so feeding yourself, taking care of yourself, the doctor's appointments, having, rest is huge over this because it is so draining. You're like the emotional part of thinking about, okay, mom's died. Now what am I supposed to do? Okay, who's doing this? Who has to do that? Someone has to be the ringleader, especially when you have a lot of siblings.
Self-preservation mode kicks in.
Yes.
Definitely.
So resting, go take a nap. Like you're exhausted, go sleep. You don't have to acknowledge an apology or just go lay down. Take that rest to recharge. And flexibility with the family and friends. You all one of the biggest things and I will say this, a pet peeve is, they've experienced a loss. You're like, and you say to your friend, you don't know what to say, right? You could just sit there in silence with them. Just sit there. You don't have to, people are so uncomfortable with the silence that and I know we say stupid stuff and, it happens. But one of the worst things you can say to somebody is they've just experienced a loss and go, listen, if you need anything, call me. They're not going to call you. Just show up.
Yeah.
Bring the baked ziti. Don't wait for them to ask. They have a dog. Take the dog for a walk.
DoorDash something.
Yes.
It does. You don't have to physically be there, but just, send something.
How about the leaves now? Let's say they're experiencing a loss and they've got, a backyard of leaves. Show up with your leaf blower, your tarp, get it done. Those are the ways that you help and support your friends and family members going through grief. Just show up. Don't wait for that invitation because it won't come. A big thing, like I touched upon, having fun, right? Like I learned so much about my mom through my brother's eyes because we all had a different perspective. And so if my one brother wanted to cut a joke about something, and we have a good sense of humor, it's okay. Joke. Levity is healing. If you can get to that point of making fun about them, how fantastic. How fantastic.
Yeah. Don't stop living because they wouldn't want you to.
When we talk about an empty chair at the holidays and Aubrey talks about they don't want you to stop living. I can't tell you. I just did an event recently and a mother lost her daughter tragically. And I can't imagine the path that this woman is walking. But her daughter was with her at the event. And the two things she said to her mom was something along her mother donated some of her organs. And the daughter came forward and said something about the organ donation and how absolutely thrilled she was to do that. And then the second part was that she gave her mom crap about put the damn small tree up, Mom. The one that lights up that we put by the TV over by the manger. Put the small damn tree up. And the mom looked at me and smiled and she sent me an email. And she said, you know what? Not only did you know where the tree was, but that's exactly what my daughter would have said, like that way. They get annoyed when you don't. And again, it's tough during the holidays. It's tough. But if there's some kind of tradition or something that you can continue to do, your loved ones on the other side love to participate. The idea of pulling the drapes down, pulling the cover over your head and going, I'm just going to get through. I'm just going to pretend it's not here. I can't wait till December 26th. The hell with it. Your loved ones on the other side are like disappointed that they can't be a part of something with you. Now, it's not to say because you didn't put the damn tree up that they're not going to be by your side during this grief. I'm not saying that. But moving forward, they love to experience part of life with you. And so it's so important that you continue in some small way to continue to have life happen.
Make that dish, make those cookies.
Oh, yeah.
Make those pizzelles.
And make the pizzelles.
Make the pizzelles.
I love pizzelles.
They're so good.
They are.
Yeah, dust that bad boy off.
Mm-hmm.
And do something. And if you invite other family members, hey, I think I'm going to make Pop-Up's favorite dish tonight. No specific reason, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Just, and come by if you want.
Right. It's the part of, and we had talked about, lighting a candle for them. For my mom on Christmas Eve, we light the candle. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we do that because it was tradition that she started.
The Anna Lee dolls.
Oh my God. The scary.
Okay.
Oh
my God.
Yeah. All
yeah.
right. Listen, I love them. It's what my mom had.
My mom Joan kept them in business for a very long time. But every year I see them when I walk in an antique store or I walk past a window and I see that creepy little Anna Lee snowman hanging out in the window. I chuckle first. And then I realize that's the tradition. That's the holiday tradition that I enjoy most. When you light that candle and you have those Anna Lee dolls, those will always remind me of her.
Why am I'm blanking on the type of candle. It's a Christmas Eve. And
it's green.
Yes. It's
I know the color.
I know you know the color. Anyway,
It's smelly.
Yeah, it's like pine. I forget.
Yes, the pine that you're very allergic to.
Yeah,
But
well, we do it for Christmas
we do
Eve.
it for my mom.
We do. But again, being in the moment of the grief, honoring them in some way, okay? Taking care of yourself, tremendously important. Friends out there, text them, stop by, leave something warm, food, a blanket, maybe their favorite movie that they would want to sit in front of and just cry, but you have to, in some way, surround your family and friends with that love. And we all love in a different way, right? Our love languages are all different. So if you're the baker, go bake. If you're the guy who's like, I don't know what to do for my grandmother, my pop just go over and do the leaves without being asked. Just go do
Fill
it.
up the gas tank.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Take the car for an oil change.
Yeah.
Those are things that you can do just to show up, to take their hand, to feed them, or just to sit there and listen and be okay in the silence. It's also important when we talk about this that there's going to be setbacks. Okay. So what do I mean? It's kind of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back over grief. So, and a lot of people talk about this when I didn't, I had a family member share with me that after my dad crossed, that for a period of time, every time they walked in the front door, they cried. They just broke down crying because it was the realization that my dad was no longer in that house physically. And then she moved forward to not doing that, not crying when she came in the door, and being able to verbalize that to us that it's okay, and that's how her journey of grief. But there's setbacks. There may be, you seem like you're doing well, and then you're having a really shitty week. It's okay to have a really shitty week. Okay. And even if people don't tell you they're grieving, if they've just lost a parent, in the last couple of months, or it's their first holiday without them, they're grieving in their own way.
They're not just fine.
Yeah.
That's a statement.
We say that to make everyone feel comfortable.
Again, people pleasing. I'm fine.
I'm good.
Yeah.
You
take it day by day.
Mm-hmm. So there's going to be setbacks. Grief encourages us to remember rather than forget. And I think that's so important. Remember, that's how you honor them. So celebrate those holidays, the special occasions, the way that it feels right for you. Nobody can dictate to you, like, don't be having, your great aunt, such and such, who's like, you should do. Everyone's intention, fabulous. Appreciate that. But it wasn't asked for. So keep your opinion to yourself, folks. Encourage them to do what feels right for them. Just what's your heart say? What do you feel like doing? You don't want to do a damn thing? You want a box of tissues? You want to put on some kind of movie that reminds you of your mom or your dad or your brother, your sister that you just lost? Go do it. Some people, would think the keeping busy, it'll catch up on you. So you can't run from grief. And grief that's not handled, and what do I mean by handled? Especially tragic grief that's unexpected, especially of a young person. I have an experience happening now that I have a friend who's lost 2 family members at the same time. And I can't imagine that grief that he's experiencing, but I'm hoping that he goes for grief counseling. Grief counseling is not to get through it, not to get over it, but to learn to have tools to manage your grief. Because truly, if you don't, and you bottle it up, put it in a closet on the top shelf, think you've handled it, because I'm a man, I'm good, I don't cry in front of people, I got this. It's going to show up, and it's going to come back with vengeance. It'll show up in your relationships, interpersonal. It'll show up in your professional relationships. It'll show up with your children. Grief unresolved will come back tenfold and affect your life and impact it in such a negative way. So I'm hoping that those that experience tragic loss really, really find a good grief therapist. A therapist, You can even do it online nowadays. That's the beautiful thing from COVID, is that you can sit with a therapist, talk this stuff through, bounce it off of somebody else. I mean, your girlfriend would want to help you through it, but she's not a therapist. She doesn't have that training, right? So, with that, I want to talk about the empty chair, right? And I want to talk about there's no definitive way to honor them, a right way or a wrong way over this. There's a poem out there that talks about the empty chair, and I thought that I would read it. And it goes, the empty chair prayer, especially at the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas coming up. The pies are in the freezer, the turkey's on the list. But this Thanksgiving, oh, how a loved one will be missed. Lord Jesus, please hear our prayer, our Thanksgiving prayer, for those gathered around a table that has an empty chair. Oh, Lord, confront and comfort their hearts. We know that they are able, and let them know this year that there's another chair at heaven's table. So, for all of you experiencing that empty chair,
we are also. Just know that though it may be empty, your hearts are full of all the memories that they give to you every single day. And never forget that. And don't ever let a holiday fade away because of a loved one who's crossed, because they are always with you. And give your loved ones an extra hug this holiday season.
Yes. So with that, I say, keep chatting with your angels, especially this holiday season, because they can hear you.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time for another episode of Mediumship Moments. If you enjoyed this episode of Kim's podcast, check her out on Instagram and TikTok at Kim Durham Medium.